Hello, fabulous friends, fans, and superstars. Welcome to your horoscope for the week of March 19, 2023. I am your astrologer, Nadiya Shah. Thank you for being here. It is a remarkable astrological week. Without a doubt, big moves are happening in the sky now, and they are massive. Now, this was a week I could not miss. And the reason is because, of course, this week we have the truly monumental move of Pluto into Aquarius. And I know I've been talking to you about this for years. For years, I've been telling you, here it comes. It's coming in 5 years. It's coming in 3 years. And now here we are. And it's almost surreal to actually be here at the precipice of having a sense that so much could change very dramatically in some cases. I'm going to invite you to think back because I want to be sure that in this video I talk about something a little bit different, because you know I've talked about this for hours and hours already, and I'll link to some of those videos below. But I wanted to touch on way back in 2020, right? We had this very special celestial event that took place in January of 2020, and it was the conjunction of Saturn and Pluto. And it was the first time that that conjunction had taken place in hundreds of years in the sign of Capricorn. And when it occurs, it represents a shift in world power. It represents that whoever has that ball of power, it's always passed around the world, and different cultures at different points will lead with that ball. But there usually is a place in the world where that ball is being held, and it is the ball of who is at the forefront of shaping power, defining power, who has it, who no longer does, and shapes what we understand about world power and the balance of it. But this time, there's something different, and that is the fact that we are now going to have Pluto moving into Aquarius. That conjunction in Capricorn represented the beginning, but it is the Aquarian energy that brings with it the changes that are necessary, that allows that change to be heralded into a new phase for humanity. Because this new beginning, this sense of one of the most important celestial connections that Pluto makes, which is with Saturn taking place just before Pluto moves into Aquarius, well, that tells us that it's about power, yes, but there's also an energy of change, of advancement, of whatever's next, that we as a collective are ready for that. We're ready to take a step forward in our collective evolution, certainly, but in our understanding of the power that we have, and perhaps the power that we will give to each other. Another thing to consider is that Pluto was discovered just about 100 years ago now. And what that means is, even though we can say that Pluto's always been there, and I know that sometimes we look at charts of historical events or figures, and we'll take a planet like Pluto into consideration, there is a school of thought among astrologers that if you are looking at a chart and you're looking at celestial bodies before they were officially discovered, before they were known by the collective consciousness, then their significance must be downplayed. Now, that's just one way of looking at it or thinking about it. Some astrologers would agree with that, some might not, and that's okay. But what we can say is that this is the first time in our conscious collective history that we are aware of Pluto moving into Aquarius. Of course, Pluto takes 260 years to go around the zodiac. 260 years ago, yes, Pluto was in Aquarius, but we weren't aware of his presence. Now we are. And it changes the way in which the sky speaks to us. Our awareness itself ends up being a conversation with the sky that transforms the way that energy is experienced is realized. And it speaks to how we co-create with the universe. We co-create what it is that we have here. And so some of the more powerful symbols that we have for understanding what could happen now with Pluto stepping into Aquarius, well, it does include looking back very recently to what has been taking place. So yes, we had the conjunction in the later degrees at 23 degrees of Capricorn in January of 2020. And that was Saturn and Pluto. And then Saturn marched on in March, moved into the sign of Aquarius. Again, this is 2020, and it was at the very end of March that we had Mars and Saturn conjunct in the sky. Now, Pluto is often conceptualized as a higher octave of Mars. That's one way that we can understand some of these very powerful energies. It's like the next step in the evolution of the way in which we understood power, which is part of Mars, and how we use it, how we wield it, how we embody it as well, what it means for us as well. And so now here we are, right? We had Saturn meeting Mars at 0 degrees of Aquarius, the very beginning of the Aquarian vibe. And I remember saying back then, pay attention to what happens, because these are some of the most powerful clues into what Pluto in Aquarius is going to look like. Some of the more intensity of what that energy could bring, the ways in which that energy can feel massive or restrictive may show up at that time. And so what happened? Well, it really did feel like the world changed very quickly. Social restriction became a thing. But there were other things as well. It was like overnight, our priorities went through a massive shift. Our understanding of who has power, in terms of celebrity, for example. In an instant, there was this new social media platform called TikTok, and it just took over and promised that anybody could be a celebrity. It went from being, famous for 15 minutes, as Andy Warhol said, to literally being famous for 5 seconds, and that's it. And we had a lot of other changes, of course, happen for the collective at that time. Now, it was the winter solstice, December of 2020, that we had the great conjunction. This was Saturn and Jupiter meeting at 0 degrees of Aquarius as well. And this showed us the positive things, how good it can get, how much can change for us as a collective as well. And so now we're here, right? We are in 2023. This Thursday, we are going to have Pluto cross into the sign of Aquarius. And this really does represent this very beginning of a 20-year journey where we will notice the world change dramatically. Yes, over the course of 20 years, but over the course of this decade as well. We've already glimpsed it going back to 2020. But it is now that represents the very beginning of moving towards that very different world that we're going to have at the end of this decade. And so some of the things, right, we can think about of what took place back then were plentiful, right? Social restriction happened, people going viral, being able to reach a lot of people. There was this sentiment that was kind of like the anti-celebrity sentiment that was taking place at the time. And it was more about the every person that was coming forward. Now, I know for me, one thing that I really started to think about was, what do we owe each other? Like, what is that we owe to each other? How is it that we live in a way that relies on the exploitation of other people, and where is that working and where is that no longer working for us? Where can we continue that pathway and where can we not? And I think this is going to be part of what we see more and more people talking about. This is a massive energy, yes, but we're getting a little bit of a taste of it. But we will know that we have arrived very quickly as a collective. Now, among some of the other things, that I mentioned or not mentioned. This shift of world power, if you think about who has the power right now, it's the places with oil right now. That's the main source of power. And those governments with the oil are able to get away with a lot. What happens if oil becomes worthless like it did? If only for a brief moment, it became worthless at the beginning of April of 2020 with Saturn conjunct Mars. What is that next source of energy going to be? And we're moving from Pluto being in an earth sign, and Pluto representing oil and connected to the earth and representing like a profound energy, symbolically speaking. And now we're going to have Pluto move into an air sign, which is about ideas. It's about wind. It's about electricity. And so we can see here that we're going to start to see big shifts in that regard. Now, the other thing is this idea of the world becoming more niche. I think that is something I've been contemplating as well. You know, right now, for example, in the astrology community, it's a vast community and a very big umbrella, and it's a wonderful thing. And there are people within segments of that community. I'll give you an example. Evolutionary astrology. It has its big dogs, right? Of course, perhaps the most renowned evolutionary astrologer, Stephen Forrest. But I'm also thinking about my friend Maurice Fernandez, who certainly has become this leader in evolutionary astrology in the world. And so evolutionary astrology is its own part underneath that big umbrella. And then there are other branches underneath that big umbrella that maybe are very different from evolutionary astrology, where maybe those people who are really into, for example, Vedic astrology, just off the top of my head, may not necessarily know who the big dogs in evolutionary astrology are. And yet the people who are into evolutionary astrology really know. And that's what I mean with the world becoming more niche. We really are already at a place where we don't have to be exposed to any information that we don't want to be. It's how the algorithms are set up. But we also know, and we've seen as of late, that algorithms can be manipulated to advance certain agendas. Where does that work for the collective? Where does that come out into the open? And where does that no longer work? It is Aquarius energy that is the sign of equality. And what that means is different things for different people. I know, just like freedom means different things for different people. But what we can say is it's going to be rooted in a more balanced approach all around with an equilibrium of power all around, where Pluto and Capricorn was all about the ruthless success and celebrating that and admiring that. Aquarian energy is almost the complete opposite because it's very much about how we are all the same, we are all equal, and it's an energy that holds a lot of humility to it in a way that Capricorn energy, with its ownership of its success, does not. I've mentioned to you as well that, pay attention, March, this month, it is very possible that someone will present themselves as potential to win the election of the United States for their next presidential election. And chances are it'll be somebody very different than we've seen so far. It'll be somebody who embodies sort of the overcoming and the culmination of what Capricorn switching into Aquarius looks like. And so it very likely is going to be somebody who is rooted in ideas, in technology, and what they've achieved on those fronts. It's going to be somebody who represents the every person in some way. So we can watch out for that as well. The other thing I was thinking as I looked at this energy, I was contemplating the Kardashians, right? Because the Kardashians certainly are icons. That's how it becomes when certain people become very, very famous. It's not so much about them anymore and who they are as individuals, but it's about what they come to represent in a larger sense. And we can see that with the Kardashians, certainly. And it's fascinating that the Kardashians really sort of entered the mainstream with Pluto in the later degrees of Sagittarius. And if you think about what made them stand out? You know, what was the thing that I know a lot of us were especially mindful of and related to was the fact that they were very curvy women. That's a very Sagittarian symbol. If you think about Sagittarius, right, being the centaur, people with Sagittarius, strong Sagittarian energies, they tend to have strong lower bodies, the thighs and the backside. And it was so fascinating how we moved into the later degrees of Pluto in Sagittarius, and this whole wave came about where that became the area of obsession, really, which is part of Plutonian energy. And over the course of Pluto in Capricorn, we have watched them, right, the Kardashians, become more and more Capricornian. And we're now here at this late stage, and we can see how it's almost as if they have become much thinner, much leaner, like mountain goats associated with the sign of Capricorn, as part of their understanding of the ascent, of continuing to move up. They've made themselves lighter. And so I think that this is so fascinating how they've come to embody and express for us iconically what Pluto and Capricorn is. But what happens when that energy moves into Aquarius? Like, I'm very much of the belief, never count anyone out. You don't know what's inside of somebody, right? And sometimes, if you're lucky, you get to glimpse what's inside of you, the fortitude, the strength. But sometimes even that you don't know until it just pops out. Like, that's actually a quote from True Blood, one of the episodes of True Blood, where Sam Merlot says that to his younger brother. Sometimes you don't know what's in you until it just pops out somehow. And so, yes, I'm very much of the belief, don't count anybody out. But having said that, it was interesting when we had that very big Aquarian energy in 2020, how a lot of those things that were admired about them became something that a lot of people didn't like. And so that show of wealth became something that repelled people at that time. And so it'll be interesting to see how our cultural figures and our icons continue to evolve. But even that, considering that we're going in a direction of more and more of a niche world, it'll be interesting to see how that comes together as well. I had a recent incredible conversation with my friend Nadiya here in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. And so I've kind of found a little crew for myself, and they're just amazing, amazing women I've loved getting to know. Nadiya is a Brazilian astrologer as well. And, you know, there were a couple of things that we were kind of talking about together. One of the things was she made me promise. She said, Nadiya, you have to talk about Venus in Taurus. You must talk about Venus in Taurus. So I will be sure to do that a little bit later, very soon, for her. But she's a very talented astrologer who does her thing in Portuguese on Instagram. I'll try to remember to link her below. But having said that, you know, we've been having these conversations, of course, around AI. That's been a big topic, right, with Pluto going into Aquarius. And we're already seeing how filters are becoming more and more sophisticated. Now, I know for myself, there was a period of time where I liked to use filters because I could literally be in bed, like in my nightgown, in bed, and I could just use a filter and I could, you know, record a video and put it up as a reel or a TikTok or a short here on YouTube. But I realized, especially now as we're moving into this like more Aquarian age, is that I think people want what's real. It's like this contradiction, which is a part of Aquarian energy as well. The contradiction is what's technological, what's futuristic isn't necessarily what's present, right? But also we want to see people's humanity. That's the thing. And I've noticed that online, where as before, there was a lot more acceptance and embrace of filters, now less and less so. And I think that trend is going to accelerate. But instead, what's happening is that filters are becoming a lot more sophisticated. And so sometimes, like for example, if I'm doing a superstar horoscope or maybe the monthly horoscopes here on YouTube, you know, I'll say to people, if I see a lot of Neptunian energy or something, I'll say, look, you might meet somebody online, but make sure you try to, you know, meet them in person or talk to them as soon as possible, because just to make sure that what you think it is and what it actually is are congruent. But now with filters, even that can become something that you just don't know, right? And so it'll be interesting to see how we navigate that. But I think one way is going to be more and more of us are going to want to see what's real, what's raw. And we're going to see that show up in all kinds of ways, including in terms of technology becoming that much more real as well, inviting people in that much more. Now, as part of my recent travels as well, I had a chance to reconnect with a very, very dear friend of mine who is actually a professor of AI. I remember we went to graduate school together. He was doing his doctoral work in AI way back then. And so it's really interesting to see him continue to evolve. And, we had a chance to really talk about AI and its significance and what it could mean for us. And there were a few things he said that really stood out to me. So one thing he said was that scientifically speaking, we don't know what consciousness actually is. There's no way for us to actually bottle that. So even if you were to say we're going to separate consciousness from body, the way that it's set up right now is that AI can only be a replica. It cannot actually be you on your journey. It can only be an exact copy of where you are right now. And that's it. Then it goes off on its own journey. It's like a split. It's not going to actually be you. But the other thing he was talking about is this idea of reimagining work. With Pluto and Capricorn, the thing that we really became more and more aware of that became much more dramatic, and I think this happened around the world, is we really started to see the differences in economic status and how that can determine so much of power imbalance. Now the energy shifts, right? And it becomes about intellect and intellectual development, but also what happens if AI comes in and is sort of taking over a lot of jobs, right? It means that we have to reimagine what it means to work and what it means to be part of the workforce. And I thought that this was fascinating because we already have a lot of those technologies that can do that. I was telling a dear friend of mine as well that, now they have AI set up in a way that if you go to it, if you're having symptoms or whatever, it is able to accurately diagnose you much more accurately, much more precisely than a doctor can, than going into an emergency room. And so again, what is that going to mean for the future of medicine? How does our future work look like? So I think this will be an interesting consideration as well, but we're going to see us talk a lot more about this very soon, starting this week. And so do pay attention to what's happening, what new ideas are presenting themselves, what big social changes are transpiring for us. Right now, as we're towards the very end of the energy of Capricorn, it's so fascinating because we began it in 2008 with financial crisis, and we're ending it this year, and we're going to have still more of this energy of Pluto in the late degrees of Capricorn later this year and into next year as well. As Pluto moves back and forth between Aquarius and Capricorn, we're going to see some banking issues continue. And yet, ultimately, it's all part of setting the stage for this big shift in our priorities, this big shift in our understanding of power and who has it, what power dynamics are playing out, where it is that we've given away too much of our power. And that is by country, that is individually as well, and what we owe each other. This is something that's going to come into the conversation as well. So it'll be fascinating to see how it comes together in not just the weeks ahead, but we have, of course, the years ahead to look at this as well. And pay attention to your own life. This is huge in how it is that it could change your own understanding of what just no longer matters to you. I think that's going to be a big characteristic of this time. When Pluto changes signs, what was so important to you one day in an instant just doesn't matter. It's something else that you're pouring your energy into. And ultimately, this represents an evolution of understanding authenticity, which is always what Pluto is about. It's always about helping us to understand and helping us to get honest about what we understand power to be, what we understand truth to be, and where the superficial just isn't going to cut it for us. Okay, Venus in Taurus for Natalia. I will say this. I love that I'm getting to talk about this as well because it was last week. And as you know, I couldn't record the video. This week I was like, load me up, load me up with whatever I need so I can sit here and do this video with you because it's just such an exciting week. And last week, of course, any given week is exciting. But yeah, last week, Venus moved into the sign of Taurus. This is earthly Aphrodite, as Socrates described it in the Symposium. This is about the pleasures of the earthly incarnation. We are incarnated for a reason, and our incarnation is not so that we ignore the fact that we are embodied, but it is to find balance among all the elements, to find balance between mind and body and spirit and soul, which is what the elements represent. And so I find this contrast so interesting because on the one hand, Pluto in Aquarius is disconnecting mind from body. Again, go back, energy of Aquarius that we delved into so strongly at the end of March and beginning of April of 2020. In an instant, we were living online. The virtual world became that much more dominant. And I know right now a lot of people are, making fun of Meta and the virtual reality that they're creating. It is very crude, I know that, but it's not that dishonoring of the symbols, right? It makes sense that somebody would be thinking about, okay, how can we create a stronger virtual world? What can we do in that regard? And so this disconnect is so interesting. That's what Aquarian energy is. It's the Cartesian split. Descartes was the one who said, I think, therefore I am. Mind is one thing, body is another thing. And so we have this energy coming in that's hyper intense mind energy. It's going to change our understanding of who has the power and information and how we share it and how we learn it. And then in the midst of this, we've got Venus moving into Taurus, as she does every year, reminding us that, look, don't forget, you're still embodied. Yes, there's about to be a whole lot of attention paid to mind, to ideas, to what's virtual, but there is something that is real. There is something that is real. And I think that's also part of the contradiction. Interestingly, right now, we've got Saturn in Pisces, newly in Pisces. And so it's fascinating to me that an energy that says Saturn is all about what's real, right? Facing the reality of a situation. Again, it's a very embodied energy, but it's also traditional ruler of Aquarius as well. It's not only about the physical incarnation. It's also about those ideas that allow our incarnation to advance, to perpetuate. But it's in the sign of Pisces, the energy of dreams, the energy of wishes and hopes. Like, what does that actually look like? Where is it that we're kidding ourselves that we're being compassionate when we're really not? We're actually being really selfish. And so we have that's encouraging us to get real about our dreams and about our fantasies and that we can't escape into them. We have energy that's hyper mind. And then we have Venus in Taurus, which is saying, don't forget to enjoy the journey. Don't forget to be present for yourself. There are certain things that can only be experienced in the body. I'm thinking about how, there's this very expansive research behind how we have wisdom that comes from our gut. And I think anybody with an intuition kind of knows this, right? Where you have experiences and you can feel it within you. You can feel it in your stomach. Those moments you feel butterflies or you feel your stomach flip, right? That's the wisdom of your body itself telling you something, speaking to you, but also inviting you to stay connected to its wisdom. And so it looks to me like we're going to be invited to find a balance and not forget to be present for our lives, to be embodied. It's so interesting to me. I did want to be sure to share an experience that I had just before I got sick last week. I was at the beach here in Rio. Of course, if you're in Rio, you gotta be at the beach. And as I was leaving, I saw a group of people coming with their dogs, right? There were a bunch of dogs, and there was one dog that was in a wheelchair, so he couldn't use his back legs. And as the dog, was stepping slowly down the ramp to approach the beach, there was this moment, and I saw it on the dog's face. It was like a click where the dog realized he was on the beach, and the happiness that came over his face in an instant. I wish I had recorded that. I so would have loved to share that with you, but I was busy being in the moment and being reminded that that dog was living in the moment. But I just thought about that sheer joy of being present, right? I mean, the dog just wanted to start running towards the water, nearly fell over in his wheelchair. And so the person handling him had to kind of slow him down a little bit. But the joy of being embodied, of being present for yourself and for your life, there is nothing like it. It is the full experience of living. It's how we know we exist in a way. And I think we forget that sometimes because more and more we're living online. We're living in our minds. We're living in the virtual world. And thank God for that, because for some of us, that has been a saving grace at times. And I think about my teen years when I went through an awful, awful depression, and how much just having books, like being able to lose myself in a book, how much that helped me move through another day. And yes, we need that. We need that sense of being able to stay connected to our inner world and our mind world. But there's something very powerful that happens when we allow ourselves to be so in the moment that we can't help but feel joy. The sheer joy of knowing that we're alive. We are in our bodies for a reason, to live in balance and harmony with them, to the best of our ability and to the best of our circumstances as well. Now, this week we've got a new moon. Now, what's interesting about this new moon happening on Tuesday, watch what happens right at the new moon and the 2 days following, because it is going to be in a month's time that we are going to have an eclipse, the first eclipse in the sign of Aries in years. This new moon is at 0 degrees of Aries. That eclipse next month is going to be 29 degrees of Aries at the very end of that sign, mighty close in the sky to Jupiter as well. Right now, it's about beginnings, it's about ideas, but it is usually 28 and a half days before we have an eclipse that the moon moves over the eclipse point that gives us some very powerful foreshadowing into what could be ahead for us. And it is that very powerful foreshadowing now that's going to tell us something about how there's going to be all this intensity rising for us as part of our individual journeys and as part of that very powerful solar eclipse coming up soon next month. And finally, if all of this wasn't enough, Mars is going to change signs at the end of this week. This is huge. We have had Mars in the sign of Gemini for an unusually long time, going all the way back to August of 2022. Normally, Mars spends about 6 weeks per sign per year, or per 2 years, we should say, rather, because it takes about 2 years to go all the way around the zodiac. But of course, the retrogrades make it so that Mars may spend an extended amount of time in 1 or 2 signs as part of a given retrograde cycle. And so now here we are. We're at the end of this. Last week was a doozy. We had Mars connecting with Neptune and other power players, and there was all this energy that might have made some of us feel tired or drained or unsure. Unsure about the information we were getting, what we were understanding, what we really thought about a given thing. Now, all of that changes. It is Mars that moves into the sign of Cancer at the end of this week. This is going to be another big shift of energy that a lot of us are going to feel. In the sign of Cancer, Mars is considered not necessarily strong, according to the ancients, but what I've found and what I've learned, especially in light of the talk recently that you can download now from Stephen Forrest at synchronicityuniversity.com. It was all about planets and debility, grace and debility, he called it. So it was a brilliant talk that we had a watch party and saw together. And in this talk, he talks about how ultimately these planets, when they're in signs that the ancients thought were not strong, there's actually a lot of benefit to that. It makes you honest about that energy. It makes you cultivate that energy consciously and decide how you're going to use it. And with Mars, it's all about understanding power, how we're going to wield it, how we're going to own it, how we're going to empower ourselves. This is where we're asking ourselves some very important questions as part of authentic empowerment, navigating forward from here. Another thing to keep in mind is that Mars is the ancient ruling planet of Scorpio, and it is Pluto that's the modern ruling planet of Scorpio. Both of these planets have to do with transformation and power dynamics, and they're both making big changes after an extended period of time. And so I feel like that very transformative energy of Scorpio, that sense of a snake ready to leave behind skin so that it can shine more vibrantly, more beautifully, is going to be a symbol and a metaphor that plays out for so many of us in our own lives in our own unique way. What I love about this week for us, there's so much here. It's a powerful and meaningful astrological moment. Wow, here we are, right? We have arrived. Well, I know there's still a few days as we start this week, but yeah, we've arrived. This is a remarkable and important moment. It's a moment that represents the very beginning of a massive shift. I have said to you again and again, the world we had at the beginning of this decade will be a very different world that we will have at the end of the decade. And so now here we are, this pivotal moment where we begin the transition into the age of Aquarius. If it is that you want that new age in your own life to be led by love and wisdom, well, Pluto sometimes, oftentimes, will show you the barriers within you that you've built up towards it. But it ultimately gives you a chance to be really honest with yourself about what is real in your life. And what isn't just isn't going to matter to us. And what is, we'll hold on to it, celebrate it that much more. Well, thank you so much for watching. What do you love about this week? Let me know in the comments below. I love reading you guys. And to prove it to you, here are some of my most recent favorite comments. Thank you to everybody who likes, who comments, who subscribes, who shares a thumbs up. All of it means so much. I'm so grateful for you. Thank you. And of course, if you want to know how all this wonderful stuff this week speaks to you in your sign, log on to NadiyaShahSuperstars.com, where you get expanded exclusive video scopes each and every week for each and every sign for as low as just $3 a month with choose your membership rate. Higher tiers get you things like all access passes to Synchronicity University events, consultations with me, and so much more. All of this in the superstar space at NadiyaShahSuperstars.com. Links are in the description below. And remember, I do have Saturn special horoscopes that are up now at NadiyaShah.com for download or at NadiyaShahSuperstars.com. And that's a deep dive into each sign and looking at how Saturn in Pisces is going to speak to you in your sign. So those videos are ready. They are up. And they're ready for you to enjoy. I spoke about this energy for the collective, not last week, but the week before. And so that gives you an overview. But yeah, this energy is a really big deal. And we are in the midst of it. We're at the beginning of it right now. So check out that special horoscope now. If it is that you want to dive into understanding Pluto in Aquarius for your sign, check out the decade ahead video for your sign and also the year ahead video for your sign as well. Also at the same sites, NadiyaShah.com and NadiyaShahSuperstars.com. Synchronicity University presents some truly incredible classes happening right now, and also new classes that are just announced that are choose your tuition rate for a very limited time that are going to start in May. And so I mentioned already earlier, an incredible speaker series is underway at the moment. And now you can get Stephen Forrest's class as a download, an instant download available at synchronicityuniversity.com. He, of course, is one of our great living legends. So proud to have him at Synchronicity University. We have other speakers as well that are absolutely brilliant. Maria De Simone shared very recently as well her predictive techniques. You can download that. And single classes coming up, including my own single class coming up next weekend, which is a first look at Neptune and Aries. Yes, I've been talking to you about Pluto and Aquarius. Now let's talk about Neptune and Aries. That's going to hit 2025, not 2015. I'm still not feeling 100%, but I'm really, really happy to be here with you, so I'll probably leave that in. But yes, I have a talk coming up, and you can sign up for that. We're going to have Omari Martin sharing as well, and he's going to do vocational astrology. Linda Kubota Bird taught recently about approaching the chart consciously. So you can see here an incredible speaker series is underway. You can sign up for individual classes right now at synchronicityuniversity.com. Links are in the description below. And speaking of my own classes, I am coming back to Synchronicity University. I haven't taught at my own school for about a year, and here we are. It is back to our roots. This is foundational. This is the basics to help you to read charts from my perspective, of course. Now, everything that we are going to look at is rooted in my book, Astrology Realized. However, you don't necessarily need that book because I'll be teaching you that stuff, but it could be a good companion if you wanted. But yes, I think it's going to be so much fun. We're going to go through planets and signs and houses and really understand the building blocks so that you can start reading charts. So whether you're an experienced astrologer or whether you're starting out fresh and brand new to it, everybody is welcome and everybody can gain something here. And so we'll really get to the core energies so that you can start tapping into and reading charts right off the bat. So join us. Right now, for a very limited time, it is choose your tuition rate as low as just $5 a class at synchronicityuniversity.com. Links are in the description below. Synchronicity University has an incredible program coming up for our speaker series in May of 2023. And for a very limited time, you can choose your tuition rate as low as just $5 a class, an unheard of rate to learn from this caliber of astrologer. I'm so proud of this group. So let's have a look. We have Natalie Levine. I love Natalie. You've seen her on my channel so many times. I love how she shares astrology. She's creative. She's brilliant. She's loving. I just so enjoy watching her, and I'm so glad that she's coming to Synchronicity University. Franco Soulbody is coming back to Synchronicity University. Now, he is one of my dear friends that I've known for many, many years. He's a brilliant astrologer, and he's going to be teaching as well this May. We are going to have Helene Cicero. She's going to be back as well, and I'm really looking forward to having her because she's so brilliant. Now, Melissa Sanova, superstar in the tarot world, Melissa Sanova is going to be with us, and Dustin Comier is going to be with us as well. So you can see here we've got this incredible group. I'm really looking forward to learning from all of them. And right now, for a very limited time, you can choose your tuition rate as low as just $5 a class. To learn from this caliber of astrologer is incredible. Learn more. Sign up now at synchronicityuniversity.com. Synchronicity University has some incredible programs in the works right now as we speak. Armand Diaz is teaching his class on prediction, and you can buy single classes now. And my very dear friend, the absolutely brilliant Michael Barwick, is teaching his class on relationships right now. But he also has previous programs he's taught with us, and for a very limited time, you can choose your tuition rate on those previous programs as low as just $5 a class. So join us, get this opportunity to sign up for his programs, which is really exciting as well. On the fixed stars, that was a very popular class that he taught before, and on traditional astrology as well. You know, I love him. He's one of my most favorite people, and I think one of the best astrologers out there. So I'm so happy that he's back at Synchronicity University. And thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for your patience with me. Of course, I wasn't feeling well. I'm still not 100%, but like I said, I had to be here. There was no way I wasn't going to come on and talk to you guys about this incredible astrology happening right now. And so enjoy it and don't forget to enjoy it. I will be walking this journey with you, of course. It's exciting. We are living in very exciting times where so much can change. And with our intention, it can change for the better. I hope you absolutely love it. And thank you. Thank you again for watching. It'll be a great week. Enjoy. Welcome to the exciting rebirth of Superstar, featuring choose your membership rate as low as just $3 a month. At Superstar, you get expanded, exclusive videoscopes each and every week, unlimited access to special horoscopes, class passes for Synchronicity University, consultations with me, and so much more. All of this in the Superstar space. I look forward to meeting you there.